Welcome to the Rethink Sales Show. My name is Derek Kelly. I am joined by Jim Shorkey. And Jim, I want to talk to you about something we notice a lot in sales. And what's your experience training people, working with people? How do you not get burnout in sales? I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, talk to a lot of salespeople. I'm burnt out. I'm exhausted. I'm working all these days. I'm not seeing stuff happen. Or maybe they are and they're just overworked. I talked to a gentleman yesterday. He was in the hospital for high blood pressure because he just worked so hard and he was spent. And he said, I got to change something. I'm done.
He does.
And so what have you seen? And we teach so much about going hard and working hard.
We got to go hard. We got to go hard.
How do you know when to stop?
Again, we're talking strategically, right? And so when you're selling, the number one thing you need to do, number one, most importantly, is to get in front of a customer, a client. That's right. So we have a client, right? And so if we're going to sell, we got to get in front of somebody to do our thing. That's number one. Number two, we got to get in front of a lot of people. That's okay. Right. So whether that number is 10, 20, 30, I don't know what the number is because it varies from salesperson to salesperson or from career to career, from industry to industry. Yeah. But the fact is we've got to get in front of a number of clients, and whatever that number is, we got to figure that out. Okay. Mm-hmm. So now we have clients that we're talking to. Okay. Yep. And then based on those clients, there's going to be a closing percentage. That's right. So if we talk to 10 people, we know from the knowledge that we've gathered that we're going to close 2 out of 10. Yeah. So we look at 2 out of 10 and that's a number. It's just simply a number. And so we got to figure out, okay, how much money do I want to make to do what I need to do in my world, right? Yeah. So maybe that number is $5,000 a month, okay? So we need to figure out now, what is the commission every time I sell one item? And so we know that commission is, just to pick a number, this is an arbitrary number, let's say it's $500, right? Mm-hmm. So that means I need to sell 10 of those products, okay? And I make my $5,000. So now I know I got to sell 10, and now I know my closing percentage is, let's just say 20%, which would be on the low side, but let's say it is 20%, right. And I got to sell 10. That means I've got to get in front of 50 people. So now I have a number. So I got to get in front of 50 people. This is over the course of a month. And so I'm going to work 5 days a week, 4 weeks out of the month, which is 20 working days. Yeah. So that means I've got to get in front of a minimum of 2 people a day, right. Preferably 3. So let's just say 3 a day. So I've got to get in front of 3 people. So 3 people times 5 is 15, times 4 is 60, right. Times 20% is 12. Now I've sold 12 things, $500 a piece. I made $6,000, right. And I'm living the life I'm living large, okay? Right. So now we have to go deep, remember? Deep, thinking it through the whole way through. What causes the closing percentage? What causes the closing percentage to be higher or lower? It's the process.
That's right.
The process. Where do I get the process from?
Expert counsel.
Thank you. Derek's listening to me. So I seek expert counsel to figure out what is the process, that's going to get me the highest closing percentage. Now, I heard your question. Saying, how do I take some pressure off is basically your question.
Yeah,
high blood pressure, whatever. So we're looking at it from the wrong end of the telescope. If I want to take pressure off, what would happen if I increase my closing percentage to 30%? And I still want to make that $5,000 a month. Think about it. Now I can talk to less people. Maybe I can work 1 day less. So let's do the math again. I know I got to talk to 3 people a day, right? Mm-hmm. 5 days a week, which is getting to be a bit difficult, but there it is, 15. 4 weeks out of the month is 60. I'm closing 20%, which is 12. That's a good number. Right. But what if it was 30%?
That's right.
Okay. So that 30% becomes 18. I'm making more money. Or I say, you know what? I don't really need the extra money. I was happy at the 10, 11, 12. So if I'm going to close 30%, that means if I'm going to get my 10, now I got to talk to 30 people. You follow the math? 30 people. Yeah. Close my 30%. That's 9. Yeah. So maybe it's more like 32 2. Right?
Yeah.
So now I've got 32. Do you hear the number? 32.
Mm-hmm.
So I take that and I divide that by 4. Now that's 8 a week.
Mm-hmm.
I divide that by 5.
Yeah.
Let's just go with 2 a day. So I've gone from 3 a day down to 2 a day.
Right.
Or is it possible that I could, if I'm doing the right numbers, can I take an extra day off? Is it necessary for me to work 5 days a week? And by the way, some of our salespeople in the world at large are working 6 days a week, 7 days a week. So let's not forget that.
Right, yes.
So if you're working 7 days a week, you're really going to struggle with your health and whatnot. So we need that time to take care of this guy here.
Right.
So it is possible that this person that you're talking to is working 7 days a week.
they probably
Can we
were,
get it cut
honestly.
back to 5?
Yeah.
Based on improving the process and improving the closing percentage, and we can hence work less time to get the same results. Or we can say, okay, you know what? I've got this big goal, the college education for the kids. I'm going to work really hard, maybe a little too hard, but I'm going to build up my bank account. And is that going to take pressure off going forward?
Yeah.
And the blood pressure gets better.
maybe.
We've thought it through the whole way through.
Yep.
So maybe I would still work my 6 days a week. I don't recommend it, by the way, but let's say we do. And I say, I'm going to commit to 1 year of this. And then I'm going to dial back to 4 days a week.
Yep.
And I'm going to have a lot of money in the bank and I'll be able to do what I do successfully. So the idea would be, rather than looking at it from the idea of working harder, what we're espousing here is working smarter.
Yeah, and that was
Okay,
the same thing.
working
I realized, I feel the pressure. If I grew my team, an X person could make profit, another X person could make profit,
Right.
and I could dial back some of my responsibility and focus on growing the business, not just working in the business, but working on the business.
Yes, working on your business versus working in a business. And thank you for giving me credit for giving you that idea.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, you can work on your business, or you can work in your business. And I did both. And to my health going down, I worked very hard in the business. I should have been working harder on the business. Lesson learned, can't go back and change it now.
Right.
I remember I said this all the time. You won't outwork me. I will outwork you. And I said to Chrysler Financial when they were in the dealership and I was in bad shape, bankruptcy imminent. And I said to the fellow from Chrysler, I said, if I got to work 26 out of the next 24 hours, that's what I'm going to do. I am not going to lose. I am going to figure this out. And they probably thought this guy's freaking crazy. But that's what I said. If I got to work 26 out of the next 24 hours, that's what I'm going to do because I'm not going to be defeated. It turns out that was a bad idea. I succeeded. I got there, but I really did work too hard. So to your friends that you're speaking to, it's really it's something we really do need to think about as salespeople. So what I could have been doing at that time is worked harder on the processes than on the doing it myself. Like you said, delegating and whatnot like that. Yeah, let's work on the process. If we improve the process, we're going to improve the closing percentage. If we improve the closing percentage, we're going to sell more of whatever it is that we're selling. And we can either go for that, or we can say, well, you know what, now that I've got this thing figured out and I got it dialed in, I know the process works, I've got total confidence, desire backed by faith, knows no such word is impossible, I'm going to start working 4 days a week.
Yeah.
And boy, life is really cool in that regard. And guess what? I'm still making my $5,000 a month, 60 grand a year, but I'm working 4 days versus 5, or I'm working 5 days versus 7, or whatever the case may be. That's how you're going to dial it back.
Yeah.
But if you dial it back too soon, now you're faced with, you're working less hours, but you're getting crushed with the pressure of not being able to pay your bills.
Right.
So that would be wrong.
Right.
You want to work on the process that's what Rethink You is all about. The idea is the thinking that I have got me to where I'm at right now. In order to get out of this mess, I've got to change my thinking first. And when I change my thinking, then that's going to create a new to-do list, a modified to-do list, let's say, and a modified to not-do list, and I'm on my way.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, because I asked you this question just because we helped a guy 10 years ago succeed so well that he succeeded himself out of business. I gave him 18 to 24 month goals. He said, Derek, I'll hit these in 6 months. Well, guess what, Jim? He did. But in the process, he worked 18 hours a day and lost his marriage and lost his kids.
And that's not what we want.
I thought, what did I do wrong? I helped this guy so much, but I helped him succeed himself out of business. He didn't recognize that he didn't have clear enough goals. He had a goal, but he didn't know the disciplines, and he didn't know the plan. He didn't have everything we teach in Rethink You 2.0
No.
of how to structure his life. Great passion, great love, great joy, right? Those pieces.
Yeah. Wealthy, unhealthy, you bought the wrong program.
Yeah.
Wealthy, unhealthy, you bought the wrong program.
Yeah.
Wealthy, lonely, you bought the wrong program.
Yeah.
Healthy, poor, you bought the wrong program. These things can exist together. We can be wealthy, we can be healthy, we can have great love, we can have great spirituality. We can have it all. We really can. But we have to be very careful in terms of how we execute these different plans. We should have a to-do list for, assuming you're married, for your marriage. We should have a to-not-do list for your marriage. We should have a to-do list for your wealth, a to-do list for your health, a to-do list for your spirituality. Whatever the case is of the things you're working on, we should have that all in terms of to-do and to-not-do. I say to people all the time, I think praying is a really good idea. I think praying all day long is a really bad idea. I do. So if you're praying all day long, that means you're not doing the push-ups. So what I say to people when they talk to me about these kind of things, I say, yeah, I think praying's a great idea. But you might want to throw a few knocking on doors to sell your products or making phone calls, whatever. A good friend of mine, Steve Gardner, well, Steve's part of this, said he has a sign on his phone says, I think it says, I make you money. Right. It's on his phone. And it says, pick me up, I'll make you money or something like that. It's so great. True. Yeah. So you can pray about it. You can sit and pray about the phone calls. Guess what? You got to pick the phone up and dial the number and let's go. Yeah. Let's go. Steve says all the time, let's go. Yeah. So praying is a great idea. It just isn't something we are going to do all day long because it's not going to get us the results that we want. And a lot of people have that attitude about it. Mm-hmm. I'm praying on it. That's great to a point. Yeah. But you can't pray all day long. Yeah. You got to make a few phone calls. You got to drive a few miles to get to, you got to read the books. There's things you got to do. And to do otherwise is delusional.
What you were saying was so good about, hey, this person's working 7 days a week. They need to figure out what can they do to bring in more income, to maybe lower expenses like you had with Mr. Hamilton, to get your ducks in a row and to figure out, okay, what's on my not to do list? What are we just absolutely changing today?
Yeah.
And what am I doing moving forward? And then from there, you could get into a healthier place.
When I was thinking about this, actually before the podcast, it just came into my mind, and I want to talk about this very quickly, is how much cash should you have in the bank right now? Cash, true cash, that you can go and withdraw $100 at a time or whatever the case may be. You can take this cash out of the bank. How much cash should you have in the bank? Now, if you can't answer that question, then you have a problem. You have a very real problem. So I'm going to give you the answer to that question right now. You ready? Number one, sit down and figure out exactly how much money you're spending every single month in terms of payments, debt, electricity. You need to know this. How much money are you spending on a monthly basis? Okay? If you don't know that number, then you have a problem. You have to know this number. So once you figure out what that number is, you just write down every single 10 cents, 15 cents, $15, $150, every single thing. You add that all up. And now you know that you spend $5,000 a month, just picking an arbitrary numbers. $6,000 a month. We'll go with six, okay? $6,000 a month. How much money should you have in the bank to be really financially viable? It would be $36,000. And you may hear that and think, holy cow, I can't even imagine such a thing. If you had $36,000 in the bank right now, and you're spending $6,000 a month, that means you can go 6 months with no income, and you'll be just fine. It's called working capital. Now, you accountants out there, you put it in the comments. Say, Jim, you're full of crap. No, I'm not. And you accountants out there, you CPA, I'm right. Bulletproof. If you have $36,000 in a month, in the bank, now you really have a safe haven that if the income drops, you're covered, right? Because you can live off those savings. And so if you don't have enough money in the bank, the goal then becomes to get that money in the bank. And so that's where we seek expert counsel to find out what's on the to-do list, what's on the to-not-do list. Mr. Hamilton told me exactly what to do because I didn't have any cash. My CPA told me cut everything, cut this, cut that. And I did that. I kept working at it. And gradually the bank account went up, and I got to a point where I was financially viable. In 1998, I was not financially viable. I was bankruptcy imminent. So I figured that out. I got the numbers up, and then I was able to have a sense of less anxiety. Because when you have not enough money in the bank, it's like, how are you going to pay your bills? If there's a hiccup or we lose a couple deals or whatever the case may be, we're screwed. So that's pragmatic accounting. You should have that much money in the bank. So if it is $6,000, I just told you $36,000, my first goal would be to get $6,000 in the bank. So at least I have a month. And then my second goal will be to get 12,000, then 18,000, and keep working at it. And so I cut my expenses, I increase my revenues by improving my sales process. I keep building the bank account up. I keep cutting the expenses. I keep working at it. And eventually over time, I do get it to where it is that $36,000. And now I keep working on maximizing these different avenues. And who knows, maybe eventually I get it to 100 grand, or maybe I just leave it where it's at and I just dial it back a notch to where I'm working, instead of the 7 days a week, I'm working 5 days a week. I feel very confident. I'm making the money. I'm doing my things, and life's going well. Does that make sense? That's really what I did. I had to get my cash position up, my break-even point down, so that I could bring more cash in, add to that account, and I kept working at it. And it's very simple. And so it's the same thing right now with me recovering from my stroke. It's what can I do to increase my health bank account? What can I do to where I am safe? And I feel like I'm getting there. Like I did the physical therapy today, and Mark said, yeah, you're amazing.
Yeah.
You're doing great. And so I can do, from when I was very sick, I knew exactly where I could walk to. And I remember this.
A year ago.
Yeah, a little over a year ago before the stroke.
Yeah.
But I had this massive pain in my right calf, which was the claudication. Okay. This is not medical advice. This is just Jim Shorkey talking to you live, okay? And so I was out with Amy, and I'm walking, and I walked about a half a mile. And Amy said to me, she looked at me and said, Jim, you're really limping. I said, I know I'm trying. I'm really trying. I'm just hurting really bad. So I got to a certain point, and I said, I got to stop. And so I remember very clearly, it was like a little park type setting. I said, Amy, keep going. You want to do your walk. I'm going to do, I thought it was a stretching thing because my calf hurt really bad. So I'm stretching. And I decided, okay, I'm going to head back to the house. And I got up and I started walking back to the house, and I got a certain distance, massive pain. I'm on the ground. People literally are driving by saying, sir, are you okay? You need help. This is an old person's community kind of thing. What's going on with this guy? I said, no, I'm good. I'm just stretching. So I finally made it back to the house. I had to stop several times. And so now I have a baseline, don't I? I know exactly what happened. So now it gets to be very dire. Had the stroke, very bad situation. Coulda, shoulda, woulda died. So now I'm in recovery. I'm working on the physical therapy, all that kind of stuff. So I knew exactly how this walk happened. And I remember very clearly, I'm going to go for that walk. And I did. And I made it past where that place was. Wow. And I kept going. And I made it back to the house, and I didn't take any breaks. So I had these different benchmarks. I know how far I made it up the hill before I was in so much pain I had to stop. I've gone beyond that benchmark. And so that's how we measure how we're doing, right? And so my stroke recovery, it's just like the bank account. So I had to get my bank account up to a certain point to where I was bulletproof. That took some time. I did it. It's the same thing now. Granted, it's not a bank account. I can't measure it the same way, but I can measure that I made it to this point. I was in the hospital. I was on my back, and I was in a bad place. And I said to the kids, I said, guys, I got to get to the Thousand Islands. The Thousand Islands is our family vacations place, right?
Yes.
Family, love, all that. Yep. And I said, I got to get to Crane Point. So where we stay at, there's a Crane Point is about 2 miles from where we stay at. I said, I'm going to walk to Crane Point. I'm in the hospital. I can't even walk with a walker.
Yeah.
I'm in the hospital. And so Katie got me a picture of the Crane Point store. It's like a little general store. And they were so kind. They sent me a Crane Point shirt, which I wore. Yeah. And I got to the Thousand Islands. This would have been now in August. Mm-hmm. And you know what I did? I walked to Crane Point. And I cried. I walked to the Crane Point. I did it. And I did it without pain. And then I walked back. And I remember walking off that road into the Crane Point store and just saying, thank you, I did it. And then I walked back.
Yeah, wow.
I did it.
Yeah.
I did it. I did get the bank account up. I did have record profits. I did become incredibly successful. I did it.
Yeah.
With this process called Rethink You 2.0.
Yeah. Guys, if this was impactful for you, let us know in the comments below and subscribe. If you're watching on a podcast platform, please leave us a review. But you can hear the realness of what this has been like for us. So thank you, Jim. And thank you, guys.
Give me some love.
Yes. We'll see you on the next episode.